to do an assignment called a wash drill. This just looks at different kinds of watercolor washes and some textures. I'm going to buzz through this. Please feel free to stop and go along with the video, but stop it as you go. I want to do it as fast as I can so that I don't take up much of your time. All right, so you're going to grab the paper that I gave you, and you're going to give the heading wash drill and write your name. We will be going over 5 different sections so that we don't crowd the paper. Let's really quick divide our paper into 3 sections. I'm just going to draw a real light line, making sure that I have about 1/3 for each section, okay? Number 1, we're just going to call this wash is a wet on dry. I'll explain as we go and paint it. The second section is a wash. This one will be called wet on wet. The third section, we will look at puddling and settling. Fourth section, we will do what is called a graded wash. And the 5th section, we will be doing a graded wash again. But this one we will look at blending. Okay, and then at the end we'll have some fun and put some textures on these. I need you to grab your palette, try grabbing 2 colors, and just put a small little amount in the bottom of the dip. Grab clean water and add it. Okay, I'm going to be adventurous. This is terrible. I'm going to pour. It didn't work so well in class today. Yeah, see, pour a little bit over. You can spoon it in, but I'm going to tilt some of my water out. Can I do that? Probably not wise. Here we go. There we go. I have put too much in. Come on. All right. Pick up my paper. I'm going to grab a small round and a kind of a medium flat. I'm going to use my flat for right now and stir it up. It shouldn't be chunks of paint still on your brush. It should actually blend into the water. You can scrape the sides a little bit to get that paint incorporated into the water. Oh, it takes a little bit of doing, huh? Okay, I'm getting there. All right, now we mentioned that we're doing wash wet on dry, which means that the paper is dry. So we're going to go ahead. Now we'll move my paint over. Where should I put it? Probably not on my computer, huh? My laptop's up there on the upper part of the screen. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and do a wash. Now when we wash, we don't actually, I'm going to actually outline first kind of the section I want to go through and wash. But you don't wash like in stripes, because when you wash in stripes, stripes show up. So when you wash, you want to go and just all different angles, because you're trying to make sure that the paint will get cloudy and it will just kind of fuzz evenly, so you don't leave stripy brush strokes. Okay, so it's just kind of all over. It will come out looking cloudy. That is a wet on dry. Wet on dry will give you those really nice sharp edges. So if you really want to make sure that you're making a stroke that has a really clear defined edge, make sure that the paper is dry. Now you can actually paint on dried paint. You don't have to have just one color. So I could let this dry and then go ahead and put something over it, and it would still have that really nice crisp dry edge. So this isn't only for just one color. All right, wet on wet. I'm going to clean my brush off. Always nice to have water. And for this one, I'm going to go ahead and paint water on my paper. And you can see this has a little bit of the orange in it, but that's okay. just getting the paper wetted first so we can see the difference in those edges. Okay, so I'll grab some of my paint, and I'm going to paint about the same amount of space, but hopefully you'll notice that it fuzzes. So you can still see that there's some distinction between the water and the paint, but it's going to fuzz. It's not going to have that really nice crisp, clear edge. Okay, let's look at puddling and settling. Go ahead and put a wash, and again, stop the video as you go. Put a wash in this section. Okay, I'm going to clean my brush out and go ahead and get that other color in there, that green. And I'm sorry, I didn't prep the green, so let me spin it around a little bit. And over here we go. Making sure it's incorporated. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and put in a nice amount of paint and make a puddle. Okay, now as it gets drier and drier, it's going to get these harder edges where it gets, it puddles. I don't know how to say it, just makes this puddle. Now notice though, it's settling in here. These fingers of color are coming out. They'll begin to just do that wet on wet together, and the colors will kind of meld a little bit. And if it's not doing exactly what you want, you can push it, you know, if you need to get more paint in a certain direction. You can also see what I'm doing is called lifting. This is something kind of beside the point, we'll talk about it a little later, but you can actually remove paint by lifting it out and wiping it off, but we're not into lifting, we're trying to puddle here. So I'm going to add a little more in. Good watercolor paint, good watercolor paper will actually let you lift and erase it basically entirely. You can kind of wash it off. Anyway, there you go. There's a nice big puddle starting, and there's some really good settling in there. Okay, graded wash. I am going to, let's do green for that. This one would be, and this is where the lifting comes in. You can go ahead and put in that color. I'm going to rinse my brush a little bit. I'm going to grab some water. And paint that at the bottom section. Kind of push it up. And so I've got a nice faint green down here. And I want a really nice darker green up above. And I'm going to let it settle and kind of blend to where it's lighter at the bottom. So you're trying to work it, and I can lift a little bit out if it's not light enough. Just lifting a little bit of that out and trying to push it darker up into the top. It is not really showing up nicely on the video. It's very subtle, and it doesn't look as subtle on the video. Okay, let's see. Now it looks stripy. Ooh. Okay, so I've got it, it's darker, and I'm fading it into kind of nothing. But of course I can lift and kind of be picking it up a little bit, and if it's too much I can put it back in. So that's the beauty of good paper. Yeah, oops, I took too much off. I'll put more on. Okay. There. Okay, so it's kind of graded. Alright, let's look at a graded wash with blending. So for this, I'll take one color, I'll put it on one side. We're kind of putting these two ideas together when we do this one. And my green isn't actually as strong as my orange. And that's okay. Okay, I'm going to add water in the middle. And letting this sit a little bit will really help it to kind of move. It'll move on its own a little bit. Okay, and again, it is going to kind of move. Now, while we're waiting for that to kind of buzz some more, push it around a little bit. Push the point. We're going to play with some little bits of texture. I'm going to salt this. Just throw some salt on. And the salt absorbs some of the color, so you can try to play with salt. It'll give this kind of starburst. It sucks up the paint in little spots and leaves these little stars. It's really, really cool. So try the salt. Another thing we want to try is spatter. And spatter, I'm going to use just a plain old toothbrush. Okay. I can take a color that I've done, grab a little bit of paint on my toothbrush, and I can spatter it on. But it's not showing up, is it? Let's see if I can get it darker. This is a really fine mist. Is it showing up? Yeah, a little bit in there, on there. But it will show up on your color too. And it will leave a little bit of a kind of a filmy look. Let me put some more green in this screen. See if I can make it darker. Make it more intense. I handed you nicer paint. I'm using super cheap paint, so it is not acting very good. Okay, let's see if that's more intense so you can see it on the video. Is that better? Alright, I'll make it blobbier. Oh, that's too blobby. I will lift. Let's lift. Okay. I don't know. Can you see it? It's very faint. Spattering is wonderful. It's very fun in watercolor. You can also spatter with a paintbrush, a regular brush. You can use the side of your finger like that. Or you can even tap. So kind of a little more thicker blobs, you can fill your paintbrush in like that. Just bounce it on your, and I'm also hitting, I think you can see with my finger. And that can create a really thick spatter. Okay? And another thing I wanted to show you was well, that, I guess we were spattering on, in class we did this. We did some spatter on dry and spatter on wet. And it kind of blends. It misses out when you do that. And if you do it on, remember how we talked about those clear edges? Your spatter will remain very edged if you do it on a dry color or you do it on the dry paper itself. This is usually like a top layer of texture. It's not so much a bottom layer thing that you do. You would layer this in the, second and third kind of round of painting your painting. Another thing I wanted to show you was another texture is just using saran wrap, and you can kind of you know, ball it up in different ways and lift the color out and stamp, and it leaves these very kind of quirky shapes. It will lift out quirky shapes and it will stamp quirky shapes. So that's another texture you can use. And the nice thing about this is that it doesn't make the same pattern twice, because you just change the plastic around and change it around like that. Another thing you have, although I don't have it, I'm sorry, I've had to, I'm not at home, so I've packed very limited supplies to do this. You can use little sponges, natural sponges, and you can also lift with natural sponges, and you can stamp with natural sponges. So anyway, that is the drill we did in class. Thanks.